Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Let's Talk About, hosted by yours truly, Zach Kyleman. Well, today it is going to be a special episode of the Let's Talk About podcast, as we are back into XFL discussion. We are, as of this recording, under a month away from XFL action, and let me tell you, I am so pumped for this league to start. I cannot wait to get my chance to watch some of these games on television, and I cannot wait to go to some of these games live. I'm planning for sure. I am definitely going to one of the games. February 23rd, I'll be in St. Louis to watch the Battlehawks. I'm also going to plan on going to another contest in St. Louis, most likely April 5th. Haven't bought those tickets yet, but most likely it's going to happen, because if no one comes with me, I'm going, no matter what. So that's going to go and take place. But that's not what we're here today to talk about. We're not here just to talk about me going to games. No. I'm not that self-centered. We're going to talk about the rules, because you guys have a lot of questions and a lot of curiosities about some of the rules that the XFL introduced. If you out there that listen to this podcast are not aware of what I am talking about, well, the XFL on January 7th announced their official rules to the game. This includes any of the changes that they are making that are fan-based or were player research-based for the game that would help change it for the better. And one thing I'm going to mention that I like about these rules and the way they present them is that each one of these rules has a rationale behind it. So this isn't a rule being made up just for the sake of trying something or for shock value. They have a basis behind the rules to let you know why certain things are the way they are. And I think it's fantastic that the XFL is doing this. It really helps to explain the game better, and really helps us to understand what the thought was behind certain rule changes and the stipulations for it. So here's how I'm going to present this, because there's a lot of rule changes. There's actually 15 specific either gameplay innovations, timing changes, or like common sense stuff that they have in here. But they all come in groups of 5, and it's very simplistic list compared to some of the PDF files you can find like for NFL rules or for other sports leagues. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each set of 5 in its own portion of the show. So we'll start off with the 5 gameplay innovations, secondly going into the timing changes, which there's 5 of those that they're mentioning, and then, to stick with the rule of 5s, the 5 common sense rules of the XFL that they are changing. So without further ado, let's dive into this thing. Alright, so jumping into this, we're going to get started with the 5 gameplay innovations. Now, the 5 that they list on their rules website are the kickoff, the point after touchdown, the punting, double forward passes, and overtime, which the one that I've seen most talked about online in this segment is the double forward pass, with some instances of talking about the kickoff and so on. So we'll, of course, get into this. Kickoff in general, the main thing you need to know is as follows. Kicker's going to be by himself from now on. He will start the 25, his 25 that is, on the field. He has to then kick it to the opponent's 20-yard line at minimum to have it qualify as a good kick. Meanwhile, the coverage team will start at the opponent's 35. The return team will start at the opponent's 30-yard line. So it's going to be a 5-yard gap where once the ball is either caught by the returner or it's been on the ground for 3 seconds, the lines can then move. So the rationale behind this is that pretty much you're trying to alleviate as much of the injury aspect of the return as possible, while also trying to possibly inhibit more return opportunities. Because starting at 25, it means that you're going to have less touchbacks. It also means that you're going to have more explosive plays because of how close the lines are. So you should be able to hopefully find a gap, and if the returner can find the gap and hit the seam, then he's able to explode for a lot more touchdown opportunities. The game becomes a lot more exciting that way. And compared to the NFL's rules, which are pretty much that, the kicking team starts at the 35, kicks off, and then you have a coverage team back there with multiple lines and then a returner, along with the coverage team having 5 coverage men on either side of the ball. The NFL's kind of made it to where the kickoff is almost just a formality anymore. We pretty much see it as, okay, let's just get into our next possession and get things underway. And the XFL is trying to change that because, well, it's kind of a boring aspect of the NFL anymore. I mean, I grew up in the era where Devin Hester was destroying the league in his returns. That was one of my idols for the Bears growing up, is Devin Hester. And we don't see people like that anymore. We see returns, but they are not as common. Returns are such an exciting play in the NFL that really got neutered, if you ask me. And so I think that this is a good opportunity to bring it back in the right way. A few other minute things with this, by the way. If the ball goes out of bounds, say an illegal procedure, or if the ball does not reach the 20-yard line, the opposing team that is returning will get the ball at the 45-yard line on their side. If the ball bounces inbounds and then goes out of bounds in the end zone, the returning team starts at the 15. So interesting penalty there, of course, as well. So a lot of things to keep in mind. This is a rule that I really think will work well in the XFL's favor. And it's one that I think really is exemplifying what the XFL is trying to do. It's trying to become a fast-paced league with also, the rules of the standard game. And I'll get into more of that later. Secondly, point after touchdown. This one was talked about a lot leading up into the rule book. We kind of knew about some of this going in. And so what the point after touchdown is you have 3 different ways you can get an extra point now. You can do either values of 1, 2, or 3, and you can do them from the 2-yard line, the 5-yard line, or the 10-yard line, respectively. So, all those values, by the way, are for extra points that do not include a kick. That is a crucial change to this. There are no more extra point kicks. They are all offensive and defensive plays. So, if you really are hurting, if you really need the points, you can start at the 10-yard line. You have 1 shot to the end zone to get a 3-point play. Basically, you can get a field goal and a touchdown in 1 scoring possession. Kind of crazy, but it definitely changes the game. Some people see this as gimmicky. I see this as a chance to really make games a little more nail-biting, because 8 points is one thing, but I mean, thinking about it, that now a 9-point gap basically can mean the difference from going to overtime or winning a game is pretty significant. So I would definitely say that this is a rule change that's pretty cool. I do like that that is offensive plays. Extra points are, I have no problem with them. The NFL has backed them up to the 15-yard line anymore, and I have no problem with that. It's just that I think this is kind of a cool way to experiment with that idea, because it's an extra point. So why not do an extra point like a scoring possession and see what you can do? By the way, if the opposing team turns over the ball and returns it to the scoring team's end zone, the value that they were going for on that possession will go to the defending team's score. So say that a defender picks off a quarterback from the 10-yard line, like it was supposed to be a 3-point play, and he returns it to the end zone. It's a 3-point addition to the defending team. So, interesting rule to consider. Punts, this one has a lot of contention to it as well. Or not as much, I would say, as the double forward pass, which is next, but I've had some talks about this one being just strange to them, or the rules seem to be favoring certain aspects of the game that people don't want, but we'll get into that later at the end of this podcast. But looking at the punting rules, so punting team cannot release the ball after it's kicked. This is a normal thing in the NFL, but here's some stuff that's different. Gunners must line up on the line of scrimmage, and they have to move laterally once the ball is snapped until kicked. So there's no more gunners releasing by themselves down the field. Interesting aspect, considering gunners are such a normal thing in the NFL, and most of them are the ones that get there first to the ball. So looks like you're going to have a lot more returners moving on their own and getting more leeway with the punts. And this is even more exemplified with some of the punting rules for the punters themselves. If the ball goes out of bounds inside the 35-yard line, it's considered a major touchback. See what I did there? Major touchback. It's used quite a bit in the rules. It will go to the 35-yard line even if it goes inside the 35. So the coffin kick, as they call it, or the kick that goes to the corner that basically can down an opponent deep in their zone, is gone. So punting is pretty much at the point where, okay, now it is up to our defenders on the punt coverage team to make sure that returner doesn't get through, because they're pretty much forcing you with this rule to return the ball. Fair catches are permitted apparently, but considering how much yardage you get in a punt now, even if it goes out of bounds, you're better off just returning it. So this is going to be quite a rule that will be tested early on. I don't know, maybe there'll be some hiccups, maybe there won't. This will also help with the scoring because you're going to be starting out way more up close to the end zone than usual for these punts. I mean, 35-yard line, that's a pretty big touchback just for punting out of bounds inside the 35. That one I'm a bit shaky on, but if it makes more explosive plays, for example, more explosive punt returns, like say I get more of those Devin Hester moments that I used to have growing up, I'm okay with it. Because, again, the NFL doesn't have these as much anymore. That's the thing. We don't see this in the NFL. The NFL, when it comes to special teams, has kind of gone stale. And I know it's because of injury issues. Injuries are a big factor in the game right now. But considering the entertainment value has gone down from the loss of those, in my opinion, and it's not the main focus as to why entertainment value has gone down in the NFL, but it's one of those factors because special teams is a third phase of the game. And you're undervaluing that phase so much with some of these changes. So it's nice to see the XFL try to boost this back up to something that's, I would say, relevant and now respectable again as a part of the game. And now we get to probably the most talked about aspect of the game innovations portion of the rules. The double forward pass. What is the double forward pass? Why do we have a double forward pass? What does it do? Can we throw it past the line? Can we not? Is it a dangerous play? Here's the deal. Basically, the rundown of the double forward pass is as follows. If you are a quarterback, say you are throwing to, I don't know, some, like, we'll say a running back, running like a sweeping route or a hitch route, you know, and you throw it to him, and he is behind the line of scrimmage. He can then throw it past the line of scrimmage to another player. Or say that you are panicking and you need to get the ball out of there, and there's kind of like this, you know, drop off or last resort man ready to catch the ball. If he wants to, he can technically throw it past the line. That's the simplicity of the rule. You just basically have to keep it behind the line of scrimmage. And it's different from the NFL because, well, they don't allow that. You can do lateral passes, but you have to, of course, stick that going backwards. So think about that. It's more of a gimmicky one if you ask me. I don't know how often it's going to get used. I mean, maybe for trick plays it'll be more of an innovation, but trick plays as such are gimmicks as to I see this being a gimmicky aspect of the league. I don't know how much it'll get used, and I'm fine if it's just minimally used. I mean, if play callers know how to utilize this to where I can find it efficient, fine. Go right ahead. I have no problem with that. But for now, just on paper, I just kind of like squinch my nose and go, yeah, this may not be used as much. This seems kind of like a kind of more of a media-esque write-up on this point. So we can push that one aside. Personally, it's not that big of a deal. Basically, just think of it as long as the ball goes behind the line of scrimmage, then we're good. The final gameplay innovation that they list is the overtime, and I love the overtime rules for this. This is awesome, and this is something that in the NFL, I don't know if they should take this stance on how they do it, but the NFL needs to reconsider its overtime. I don't care if you were for or against specific teams that have been affected by overtime rules in the past. Personally, they just need to be changed, period. Because both sides really should get a fair chance. The NFL used to allow this, and they changed the rules to help speed the game up. And there's been some cool moments, but I mean, we should really have a chance where both teams get a shot. I mean, think about the AFC Championship game from 2008, from the 2018 season, where it was the Pats and the Chiefs. We didn't even get to see Patrick Mahomes respond to Tom Brady, and I thought that was ridiculous then. This year we have it where we have Saints fans complaining about the New Orleans Saints and Drew Brees not getting a shot to respond to Minnesota. Again, I agree. You should be allowed to at least respond, which is why the XFL's overtime rules are pretty awesome, because they go and they do a shootout style. So what is a shootout style that I should bring up? The NHL and the MLS, they do basically rounds of competition for their overtime. So what they do is they will basically have single play possessions. This is the XFL, by the way, and this applies for NHL and MLS kind of. But in the XFL, they'll have single play possessions that rotate. And so you'll have 5 rounds to start. Each team will rotate rounds for plays, and will get scores based on those plays. Each score counts as 2 points. And the way this works is you have to mathematically eliminate the opposing team to win. In essence, in overtime, if your team is, say, up 8 points to 4 right now, and this is the 4th possession for your opposing team has 4 points, they would need to score to stay mathematically part of the game. If you were to stop the opposing team, mathematically you would win in 5 rounds. Thus, that is how the shootouts would roll. Now, if the teams are tied after 5 rounds, pretty much this is how this would work. If teams are tied after 5 rounds, rounds continue until one team is leading at the conclusion of a round. So, if all 5 of possessions are scored between the 2 teams after 5, they'll just keep going. And that's fine too. That's how it should be, really. We should have a definitive winner. And that's what this is doing. I have never been a fan of ties. I think ties are kind of a joke. The NFL doesn't want to do double overtime anymore because it's about time constraints. And that's cool. And the XFL is mostly the same way, where they're trying to keep a game under 3 hours. But the thing is that their overtimes are also pretty fast-paced as well. So, considering that they would go beyond 5 rounds, I'm okay with this. And it adds suspense for every single play. And again, you don't end in a tie. You don't feel this weird pit in your stomach feeling when a team doesn't get the chance to win or lose. I mean, I can remember specifically a point this past year. It was Arizona Cardinals versus the Detroit Lions. And that game ended in a tie. I had my best buddy right next to me watching this game. And basically, we just left there going, what do we say? Because ties are just weird. I find the concept is weird. Yes, sportsmanship's there, shake hands, go home, cool. But there should be a definitive winner and definitive loser. That's how this is, or this is how it should be with a sport that's football. The XFL's doing this right. I love these overtime rules. Thank you, XFL, for doing this, and thank you for listening to fans on this, because this was something that I feel fans have had a problem with for years. So that's the main core gameplay rules, game-changing innovation rules, and we'll kick off the next segment with 5 things that help the timing of the XFL. Now, if there's one aspect of the modern-day NFL or modern-day football contest that seems to be brought into question or needs change a lot, is apparently timing. A lot of people are saying that the timing or the pacing of the game needs to be changed and that we need to cut down the game because the games are too long, the games are boring, whatever. If you ask me, those people need to look at the MLB and go, really? You're going to criticize football? Well, you can look at baseball and say that those games take way too long. And just for those out there listening to baseball, I'm not saying baseball is a bad sport. I'm just telling you that if people are going to criticize the NFL for being long, you should really look at baseball and have an issue with baseball for how much time it takes. That's a whole nother story for another day. Today, we are talking the timing changes still as part of the XFL rules. Basically, we have 5 of them that the XFL has brought up. Again, we're sticking with 5s for these specific rule changes. So the 5 that they have are the 25-second play clock, the comeback period, the running game clock that they have, timeouts, and replay rulings, which replay rulings and I would say the 25-second play clock are going to be a unique feature to the game. So, let's get into this, starting with the 25-second play clock. So, for simplicity's sake, basically the XFL is going to use a 25-second play clock for plays rather than the NFL's standard 40-second. Reason being is this will speed up plays for the teams, and it apparently will take 7 seconds to spot the ball, which we'll get into the ball spotting aspect of the game in a later segment for the common sense rules. So the 25-second play clock is essentially to speed up the game. It's just faster than the NFL. I'm curious how this will work with teams because they're going to have to get much more efficient at getting these plays out. And also considering that these players they're not the NFL level, this is considered more minor league play, I'm really curious as to how well this will work with players of that tier. I hope it works really well, because if that's the case, might be a good sign for teams signing other players in the NFL, mainly because they'll be more prepared for a fast-paced play. So, an aspect that I think will work in the favor of players and also in the favor of the XFL's competition. There is a comeback period in the XFL. That's the second change for the timing. Occurs at the 2-minute warning, so there's going to be a 2-minute warning in each half, similar to the NFL. On plays that end in the field of play, the game clock will be stopped until the ball has been spotted and 5 seconds have run off the play clock. Interesting. So they're going to be running a college style of spotting the ball, where basically players get to reset. And the way I look at this is that you are trying to make this a point of tension. The 2-minute warning in a game is designed to be that tension spot. So this is the part of the game where you want to be tuned in the most. And so I think they're really trying to capitalize on that. And they explain that, of course, in the Rationale Current NFL Rules segment, where the NFL has a similar setup, and it's mainly the most anticipated part of the game, the most exciting part of the game. A team can also not run out the clock at the end of the game until the opponent has no timeouts and there is 1 minute left. So you have to play at least a minute into the comeback period to even run the clock out. Interesting, meaning it's kind of like the old Arena Football League rules, where before last season, the final season before they went under, you pretty much had to play to score at all times. You could not take a knee. You could not end the game on a knee. So, curious. I do like that, because at least you get a minute of a chance to come back and make the score close, so then teams at that final minute have to play it out. Good call, XFL. Good call. I do like it. Speaking of clock rules, before the 2-minute warning comeback period, there is a running game clock from now on. So, unlike the NFL or college, you have a completely running game clock no matter what the scenario. If the ball is incomplete, if you go out of bounds, the game clock's going to keep moving. So time is of the essence, even outside the 2-minute warning. In the NFL and college, there are specific reasons the clock stops. However, you need to be on the move for this. So this is all part of the XFL trying to cut games to around or under 3 hours. And again, this has been brought up with other leagues, like the Arena Football League tried to do this, and other sports leagues that are starting for football are doing this as well, where the 3-hour mark is apparently crucial. And I think it's more to the casual fan, because hardcore fans like myself and many others in, say, the Fan Zone network that I am associated with, we're hardcore fans. We're going to watch these games no matter what. But for the casual fan that likes football but doesn't like to, I would say, use their entire day for football, I think they want these games to be cut down so they can go, okay, cool, this game's over in under 3 hours, now I can go on my way and do A, B, C, D with my day. So that's, I think, what the rationale is behind it. And I think that's okay. I'm fine with it. It worked with the Arena Football League. I think it can work with the XFL, especially with all the rule changes they have. and the fact that they are working around trying to make the game suspenseful without feeling rushed. The fourth timing change I have is the timeouts. So the XFL will only use 2 1-minute timeouts per half. So there's no more 3 timeout setups like the NFL or college. And the idea is that with the 2-minute rules being in place and how they are, with so much time being dedicated to focusing on those minutes of the game, you don't need as many timeouts to worry about a comeback or timeouts to worry about changing your philosophy, since the 2-minute warning is going to slow down the half anyway. So that's why they took one of the timeouts out. I don't know. I'm kind of mixed on this. I get the pacing issue that they're trying to solve, but I mean, 3 is a standard. I didn't see why that needed to be changed. That's one that I'm kind of iffy on, but I understand that the 2-minute warning acts as its own timeout. It makes the game much slower paced than it initially has been. And then the final rule change for timing, and one that has been talked a lot, and one that I really, really like for the most part. There's one portion of it I'm kind of questioning, is the replay rulings. And this is one of the most contentious, if not the most contentious aspect of college football, of NFL, is how do we do replay rulings and officiating correctly? Well, here is the deal. The XFL will have no coaches challenge, and that's the part I have a problem with, is the coaches can't do a challenge. But all plays will be subject to review from a replay official who will be stationed in the booth above the field, aka that's the Sky Judge. So they brought the Sky Judge back from the Alliance days. What is the Sky Judge? Simply, it is what they just mentioned here. He is a de facto presence at games. He can overrule officials if there is an egregious call. Bravo. I don't understand, and this is me clapping, by the way, because I'm just, thank you, XFL. I don't understand why the NFL can't initiate this. They have been asked this before, and they say, no, we can't do it. It's not possible. I ask again, how is this not a possible addition to the NFL? It drives me insane that they can't do this, because they can do this. They have plenty of manpower. They are one of the richest sports leagues in the world. How are you not able to invest into your league a way to watch over egregious play calls? This year was god-awful in how many egregious play calls there were in the NFL. And the XFL introducing these rules with the replay rulings, with the Sky Judge mentality, is fantastic. By the way, here are the reviewable plays. They are limited to this: plays involving possession, plays involving touching of either the ball or the ground, plays governed by the goal line, plays governed by boundary lines, so basically the out-of-bounds lines, plays governed by the line of scrimmage, plays governed by the line of gain, number of players on the field at snap, game administration as well, penalty enforcement, proper down, spot of foul, status of the game clock, disqualification of a player. The list of reviewable plays is identical to those in the NFL prior to 2019, is what it says in the rule. So it's boundless. It's endless. The Sky Judge has a lot of authority here. There's 2 exceptions to this rule that they list. The replay official may correct obvious errors involving player safety at any point throughout the game, and the replay official may correct any egregious, obvious error that may have a significant impact on the outcome of the game in the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter or during overtime. So, essentially what they did is they tried to fix everything that has gone wrong in the last few years with NFL officiating and put it into this little package. I cannot say enough thank you, XFL, for doing something that the NFL seems to try to ignore or try to pass off as much as it can, because it doesn't want to deal with this issue. The NFL does not want to touch this issue because it'll get refs involved with an arguing match, and it'll be this trust battle between the league and its officiating union. But the XFL's doing it right. And this might be one of the most crucial pieces to the XFL's existence, is how they do the replays and if they use it more often. The Alliance had it, but here's the thing. The Alliance also had a terrible TV deal. The XFL is going to be in front of many more audiences because of the choice of television networks that they have. Remember, 2 of these networks that they're broadcasting on, they are over-the-air broadcast networks. So Fox and ABC, those are going to be games that you can get anywhere. You do not need a cable subscription. You can just get a TV antenna and watch these games via TV antenna. You know, like NFL games are on Sundays with Fox and CBS. You can get these games. And that's the thing that's great with the XFL. These rules and things they're introducing, especially the replay rulings, these will get out in front of people. They're not going to be locked behind a cable subscription like the Alliance was at times. So, if you have the chance, watch them. This is a rule that's going to change the XFL and it's going to possibly change football. Because if this works out with the XFL, I think there's no choice for the NFL but to do what they are doing. Because at this point, the fans are getting tired of it. I know I've been tired of it. I know way too many people that are tired of this rule issue. So thank you, XFL. That is the fifth, and in my opinion, is one of the best rule changes the XFL has. That's the fifth of the timing. And we got one more segment to go. Now, the final segment of XFL rules that they list on their rules page is 5 common sense rule changes. The 5 that are listed are going to be the 1 foot inbounds, ball spotting officials, coach-player communication, the simplification of illegal man downfield, and shorter halftimes. And 2 of them in particular, I am really a fan of, especially for how they're labeled or just how they affect the game in general. So we'll get into these things. So the first things first is the 1 foot inbounds, and take it as you will, whether it's a change in how professional this looks or not. But here is what they mean for catching a football, and they have outlined the process of a catch very well for this, because this is another contention point with football fans. What's a catch? What is the classification of a catch? So, to catch a ball in the XFL, here are the 3 points they have. 1, secure control of a live ball in flight before the ball touches the ground. Number 2, touches the ground in bounds with any part of his body. So the player has to touch in bounds with any part of his body, by the way. And then 3, maintain control of the ball long enough to enable him to perform an act common to the game. In example, it says, long enough to pitch or hand off the ball, advancing it, or avoid or ward off an opponent. Pretty simple stuff. And what really simplifies this is the first 2 points. Securing the ball, aka grasping it in your hands, or chest in general. And number 2, any body part qualifies as being in. They're kind of doing what the college rules are, where it's 1 foot in bounds, but they're simplifying it to a great extent. Here's the NFL rule, by the way, and I want you guys to listen to this. I'm going to read it as the XFL website's written it from their original rules. So the NFL rule is as follows: to gain possession of a loose ball that has been caught, intercepted, or recovered, a player A must have complete control of the ball with his hands or arms, and B, have both feet or any other part of his body other than his hands completely on the ground in bounds. And after A and B have been fulfilled, perform any act common to the game. It is not necessary that he commits such an act, provided that he maintains control of the ball long enough to do so. This rule applies in field of play, at the sideline, and the end zone. I'm sorry, what? The middle portion of this is completely convoluted, and I've tried reading this multiple times in the past. It's hard. The way the NFL wrote itself into kind of a corner, because there's not really a good way of stating this rule, except the XFL did it because they're a new league, and they made it really, really simple. And the rationale is as follows: catches in the NFL are often up to debate because of timing control of football. By simplifying the rules to establish control of the football, we are creating easier ways for officials to determine when the catch is made. When interviewing over 100 players, by the way, they interviewed over 100 players on this, so they got player feedback. Thank you. Players often said, a catch is made when your hands are catching the ball, not your feet. Funny how that works. And I do like that aspect. Now, obviously this has been brought up by some people. Does 1 foot being in bounds, or say a body part, kind of take away the professionalism of the catch? Yeah, it might, because the NFL does 2 feet, but thinking of it this way, you're simplifying the game, you're not confusing fans. Fans don't have to be as involved. One of the biggest complaints I have with casual fans is the NFL rules seem to be over complicated. And I think simplifying this rule in particular helps with a lot of the officiating issues that the NFL has. Obviously, this is an experiment, so we'll find out in season 1, but I feel this is a change for the good. Similar to how it was in the timing section where I'm talking about replays, this is a good change for the better, I find. So, looking forward to this. Second one on our list was the dedicated ball spotting official. I think this is nice. It's not as big of a change, but it's something for a change of pace, speed option to the game. The XFL is basically stating there's going to be a dedicated ball spotting official who will be responsible for spotting the ball at the start of a new play and getting a new ball. And the NFL already has a system in place where they just kind of go from ball boy to official to another official. And the understanding is this will supposedly cut down on the time to get the ball out. And again, this is a timing thing and also to help with officials, because you give one official the job of ball spotting, the rest of the officials can do their job better because they don't have to worry about the ball as much. That's kind of the idea. And a lot of times with 2-minute warning scenarios, an official rushes the play or puts it down incorrectly. This is a good opportunity for the ball spotting official to be the one that, he knows where the ball's at, so he's going to put it correctly down. I like this idea. It's not as impactful as the others, but I like this idea. Now, coach-to-player communication. So for the XFL, this is still in development apparently, but the goal is for a select amount of players to have the kind of the helmet receiver that you see in the NFL. I imagine they're going to designate that in some way, either be a sticker or something on the helmet. But coach-to-coach players, they're going to be allowed to be as one member of the coaching staff on the bench, communicating with a player through a speaker, as we mentioned, and broadcast partners are going to have access to this, by the way. So this is kind of cool. You're going to hear the communication of players getting these calls. It's going to be kind of a fun way to change up broadcasts. I do like it for that aspect. And the NFL has this too. It's just they don't, of course, allow the communication on air, and the rationale is that basically it allows people to listen into the calls if they want during the game, and then it also is just it's a common practice thing. It doesn't really change anything, I would say. The only difference is the broadcast aspect, but they're trying to figure this out. This seems pretty cool. Next up is the simplified illegal man downfield. Again, another rule that seems to have a very convoluted description in the NFL or in college. So, the XFL, what are they going to do with this? So, the XFL states, no ineligible player shall be or have been more than 3 yards beyond the line of scrimmage until a passer throws a legal forward pass that crosses the line of scrimmage. A player is in violation of this rule if any part of his body is beyond 3 yards. Seems pretty simple to me. Doesn't seem of much issue, if you ask me. Here is the college version, which is basically after a snap, Team A and eligible player immediately charges and contacts an opponent at a point no more than a yard beyond the neutral zone and maintains contact no more than 3 yards beyond the neutral zone. So college gives a 1 to 3 yard barrier. In the NFL's rule, I'm going to just read the whole one because it's just like the catch rule. It's very convoluted the way you read it. An ineligible offensive player is illegally downfield if A, he moves more than 1 yard beyond the line of scrimmage without contacting an opponent, B, after losing contact with an opponent within 1 yard of the line of scrimmage, he advances more than 1 yard beyond the line of scrimmage, C, after losing contact with an opponent more than 1 yard beyond the line of scrimmage, he continues to move towards it. Just stop. Why is this rule written this way? That you wonder why you have such issues with that rule too. It's terribly written. That's a very big judgment call type of play. The XFL is making this rule simplified. Pretty much there's a parameter. If you're that far downfield, that's illegal. Simple as that. And it is 3 yards. Seems a lot, but here's why they did it. Simply they're adjusting this because the football is becoming a game of RPO. The NFL is a lot more RPO, and the XFL is probably going to have it too, so I would expect it to be nonetheless part of the game. And the final rule that they have for common sense, shorter half times. And I love how simplified this is for the rule. They pretty much just write this as follows: 10-minute break, then back to the action. It's just like Vince McMahon and company had talked about when they first announced the XFL. Less stall, more ball. And the half times alone will be insanely quick. And that's going to add to, of course, the 3 hours. NFL halftimes generally, I've noticed, last about a half hour because they try and go so fast through the highlights and all that. And of course they want to. That's what it should be. And they have other commercials to deal with, but the XFL's apparently worked this out, and we'll see how this works. I know one thing's going to be great is that it's enough time for you to definitely make a meal or a quick snack and to then get back in your seat and watch. So a good change. Good change for the better. Now, before I end this episode, I do have to bring up a issue that one of my followers on Facebook had that he commented on the rules. And it's kind of about the security issue that the league might have when it comes to injuries, specifically the punts. And I do understand this because the punts seem like the part of the game right now they're trying really hard to make a viable option again. And there's going to be a lot more contact in these plays, especially compared to the kickoff. So here's what I have. This is a comment from a good friend of mine by the name of Alex Gravett. He is a very knowledgeable person in the field of football, and here's his thoughts. In quotes, concussion league, these rules are asking for carnage. Part of me is against it, and part of me is pumped. So I like this comment a lot, and the reason why is that, yes, as football fans, we like seeing the massive hits. We like seeing the destruction of a play at times. Now, does that mean I like to see someone intentionally get hurt? Absolutely not. As much as I don't like certain teams out there, I don't like seeing people get hurt. You might think I'm lying, but I'm not. I'm not lying. And in particular with the punts, yes, this is a concern of mine too, to a degree, because yes, they are pretty much telling punters, okay, here's the deal. You're going to not be able to punt out of bounds without taking a massive hit on yardage. So you're going to kick it inbounds, and if you do that, then we're going to return it almost every time. So yeah, it's going to be a thing that gets tested. How well are injuries going to be handled? And that's a question that's going to be seen, because a lot of these rules are about faster play and are about more of the big time play aspect that might lead to then more violent hits because it's much faster speed and pace in the game. I don't know how much we'll get of that, though. It's definitely not the 2001 version of the XFL where violence was the number one de facto piece of the pie for the league. They're trying really hard to change the game for the safety version of it as well as the watchability. And the punt's going to be the one that's analyzed the most. And I did like this question because, like I said, you look at the leagues now at the NFL, the CFL, the indoor football league, football leagues in general that, we know what the concussions are now, and we know what CTE can do to a brain and what it can do to a person. And this is something that's going to be addressed and still going to be an issue of football moving forward. And if the XFL can bring in these rule changes and make maybe something better for us, then that would be fantastic. And we're going to see the injury data by the end of the year. I imagine somebody will come out with it. They will compare it to the NFL to an extent because you do have less players in the league because there's less teams, but they can at least compare it based on a specific percentage of players and all that. So we'll see how this goes. I did like the question. Thank you very much, Alex. And again, if you ever have questions or comments or things you want to bring up, this is the time I would do it. Again, my phone number to contact me and give me a voicemail is 317-643-1473. Again, number is 317-643-1473. And you can call me, leave me a voicemail, and it can be part of the show. And with that, that's going to wrap it up. That is about it. The rules overall, I'm pretty ecstatic for. I do like a lot of the changes the XFL is doing. Again, some things, very few in particular, are what I consider gimmicky, but overall, these rules, I think, are really going to make this game stand out compared to the NFL. And that is one of the biggest things with the XFL you're trying to do, because you're trying to stand out from the crowd right now. You're not going to rival the NFL in viewership or attendance, but you're trying to stand out in the crowd, start a base to where year 2 and 3, you can build on that base. So this is a great start to the league. I'm looking forward so much to February 8th to watch these games, and I hope you are too. If you want to give me, again, a heads up, what do you think about my interpretation of this? Again, give me a contact or whatever in any way, shape, or form that you have. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram nowadays. Facebook is Let's Talk About, hosted by Zach Kyleman, or at Zach Podcast Blog. Twitter, you can find me at ZK Podcast. That is at capital Z, capital K, capital P, ODCAST. Instagram, you can also find me at ZK Podcast, but all those letters are lowercase. And make sure to follow me and subscribe on YouTube. By the way, we're going to have all the episodes in video form, as well as updates on the show that I will be posting there too. Until next time, thank you very much for listening to this. Let's look forward to XFL 2020, and stay tuned.